welcome, very good afternoon to all of you. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. First up, let's bring you up to speed with the proceedings that happened in the Supreme Court today with regards to the farmers' protest. So to begin with, the Supreme Court made some strong statements, and also remember this was a plea seeking removal of the protesting farmers from Delhi borders. And in this light, the Supreme Court said that it is very disappointed over centre's handling of the issue and is not doing it correctly, hinting at a stay on the implementation of the farm laws. The top court questioned as to why the centre is insisting on implementing the law despite the grueling circumstances and the delicate situation, and what is really stopping the centre from putting the laws on hold. That is the primary question raised by the top court. Also in a huge relief to protesting farmers, the Supreme Court said that there are no orders that can be passed immediately to vacate Delhi's borders. However, the top court urged the farmer leaders to back the elderly women and the children given the risk of the coronavirus. So that's the big picture that we are getting at the moment. Also, let's remember the Attorney General representing the centre said that the government wants a solution to end the crisis and hence has agreed to as many as 8 amendments suggested by the farmers. All due processes have been followed to pass the new laws, also pointing out that none of the petitioners have mentioned anything about the laws being unconstitutional. So those are the primary arguments made in court. I'll have my colleague Meenakshi join us and take us through the important highlights of what transpired in court today. Meenakshi, over to you to take us through the important highlights and to run us through all the big developments pertaining to this plea that was asking for removal of the protesting farmers from Delhi borders.
Well, that's right. We saw the matter come up for deliberations today, and what the central government would not have expected perhaps was the tough approach taken by the Supreme Court. At the outset, it was the Chief Justice of India expressing sharp displeasure at the manner in which this entire case has been conducted on grounds. Chief Justice of India clearly stating to the central government that enough has not been done to address the grievances of the farmers. And secondly, the Supreme Court giving an ultimatum of sorts to the government, saying that either you put in abeyance the implementation of the farm laws on ground or the Supreme Court will be constrained to do so. Now remember, it was before the Supreme Court had headed for its winter break ahead of December. That was the first time the Supreme Court had floated the proposition to the government, saying that the implementation of these sticky legislation should be put in abeyance while the negotiation process with the farmers are underway. And today was the second time the Supreme Court has said this, but it has said this in the form of an ultimatum of sorts. And like you rightly mentioned, it was the attorney, top law officer of the Government of India, who was at hand to again oppose this proposition of the Supreme Court, saying that there is no unconstitutionality that has been brought to light as far as the sticky farm laws are concerned, which can merit for the government to intervene or stay the implementation, saying that it was for the larger good and welfare of the farmers. That apart, the Supreme Court has also urged for the farmers to consider an alternate venue, saying that court does not want to be seen in any way to be stifling the protests. Peaceful protests are very much a part of the farmers' rights, but it wishes for them to consider an alternate venue so that others cannot be inconvenienced. At the same time, Supreme Court also saying that if women and children can be kept away from the protests, given the fact that it is not just bitterly cold here in the northern part of India, but also the fact that there is the continuous threat of the COVID-19 virus spread. That apart, Supreme Court is of the opinion that lawyers like Mr. Colin Gonsalves, Prashant Bhushan, Mr. Phulka and Mr. Dushyant Dave should meet with the farmers today, get back to the court tomorrow if the farmers are willing to move from their protest venue, given the fact that the Supreme Court is considering the fact that if the government itself does not put the farm laws implementation in abeyance, then the Supreme Court may be compelled to do so. So if the Supreme Court considers that prospect of the farmers' demands, whether then the farmers would be in a position to move their protests. Yes, back to you.
Yes, that's the question we are addressing today on Big Story. Meenakshi, thank you very much for taking us with great detail through the proceedings that happened in court earlier. Let me welcome my guest this afternoon, Sudesh Verma, spokesperson of the BJP, and Avik Saha, convener of Jai Kisan Andolan, also part of the Farmers' wing of Swaraj Abhiyan. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on Mirror Now. Very good afternoon to the two of you. I want to begin with Mr. Sudesh Verma. you heard my colleague there point out exactly what the top court says. Now, what I want to ask you, which is interesting, is that here is an ultimatum, whether we like it or not, that if the centre is not willing to put the laws on hold, the top court will be compelled to do so. Now, round and round of talks have completely failed. Nothing seems to have come for it. Now tell us, if this is what was to be done, it could have been done in the first instance, isn't it? So many farmer lives could have been saved if only you agreed to put the laws on hold in the first place.
You see, we have not agreed to put the law on hold for the simple reason that lot many agreements have been signed between traders and the farming community in various parts of this country, and the court must look at it at a very comprehensive way. You cannot just take a decision because certain sections of the farming community have come on the street, where the other section that have gone ahead with the legislation, what are you going to do with that? They will suffer financially and even otherwise. So the entire picture has to be taken into consideration. These are observations of the court, and of course, when the court takes a decision, we'll be able to comment on that. But the fact remains that, you see, whatever the things the court has done, or the court has been saying till now, like formation of a committee, like asking those people like women and children to go back, this is all what the central government has been requesting the farmers to do. The idea of committee was floated by the central government long time back, where we said that yes, come with your proposals to the expert committee, let experts decide what is going to happen. But nobody is coming with a specific idea about where the problem is. They're just coming with a demand that is scrap the farm laws. So in such a situation, whether the representative lawyers who are going to talk to them, whether they will have enough authority to speak on behalf of all the farming community, all the farmers unions that have come, this is also something which we have to look into, and we have to wait for that. It doesn't seem likely because
no, but Mr. Verma, you have to understand that the court has declined to discuss the merits of the law. It may be very well intentioned. For your sake, let me concede, it may be very well intentioned, but the fact of the matter is you have failed to convince the farmer representatives on it. And you talk about how the farmers were misled. Well, you had one-on-one talks up front with them. Why did you fail to convince? There was no one to mislead the farmers there.
No,
even on your one-on-one consultations, you could not convince the farmer representatives how well-intentioned it is and how good it is for them. Who is to blame for that? The negotiations have failed. Are you willing to admit?
No. We have not failed. The entire country is debating that, and we are ready to debate on each and every clause of the legislation. But the issue is that these people are not ready to discuss.
No, but for how long? The farmers cannot be sitting in Delhi borders forever, braving the bitter cold. So many of them have died. There is a pandemic still raging in this country. The court is concerned for the right reasons.
No, of course, we are all concerned, and the government is also concerned. We empathize with the farmers, but at the same time, when you raise a demand that is scrap the law, then you are going against the whole principle of constitution where the parliament enacts a law. We are ready to make amendment. We are ready to talk to them. We are ready to concede the points on which they have serious objections. They need to convince the government, but they don't want to do that. Within the farming community also, you have different unions saying different things.
So you're saying that this is a deadlock which technically has no solution then, because 8 rounds is a lot of round of talks with any protesting group, and if all these rounds have failed to yield any positive outcome, the electricity issue and the stubble burning was never the primary issue to begin with. So let's just say that the talks have practically yielded nothing. Avik Saha, coming to you, what is the option before the farmers? Because this is not really a win-win for the farmers leaders as well, because come to think of it, what the court has essentially said is that the best recourse that can be taken is that the laws can be put on hold. Does that satisfy you? Because after having come so far, the best that you can get at this point is a hold on the implementation. Nothing beyond that is being committed to you at the moment.
All of us understand that we are discussing some observations made by the Supreme Court judges in the hearing today, and some statements and counter statements made by the lawyers who were present. So I think we should all wait for that order. The court has indicated that it will pass an order. Having said that, the right to protest is not contested. The formation of a committee is not clear to me, from all I read in the tweet, because it is the government's prerogative. And I agree with Mr. Verma to make a law and to convince the country about the law and to implement the law. The court's prerogative and the court's jurisdiction is only if the law is illegal per se, against the constitution, then the court comes in. So this committee will
Yes.
do what? I'm not clear. Will this committee act as a subcommittee of the Supreme Court to decide the merit of the law? The Supreme Court shouldn't do that. After all, it's its own work. Whether the law is legal or illegal, constitutional or anti-constitutional, is the Supreme Court's job. So the only thing that the committee can do is to engage with the farmers so that the protest is withdrawn. Is that the TOR of the committee? I'm not sure. These are speculations I make. So the government, the political executive, has to engage with the protesters. They may represent everyone, may not represent everyone. Mr. Verma is free to have a view on that, but they need to engage and resolve it. The Supreme Court is trying to help the government to resolve it. The Supreme Court's job is not to do it. That's very clear, and the Supreme Court has said so. I again urge the government to understand what the reasoning of the farmers is and to resolve it. This is not the time to be adamant and tough. You don't have to be tough with people within your country. Let's be tough with those outside the borders of the country. So this is the attitude that the government still needs to take. I do really hope that the Supreme Court doesn't have to get into the business of governance. It is not in the business and should not be. The Constitution does not mandate the Supreme Court to be in the business of governance. And the farmers' organizations,
Which is, in that sense, Mr. Saha, you are also conceding that the only way that there can be a resolution to this deadlock is between the protesting farmers and the government engaging in talks. There is only so much that the court can do. The court can only look at the constitutionality and the legality of the law per se. Beyond that, if the laws, the merits of the laws or its functioning has to be worked out, that has to be between the two sides. Do you agree with that, Mr. Sudesh Verma? And what is your way forward from here? Like Mr. Avik Saha said, these are our farmers, they are our annadatas. We have to engage, we have to empathize. But what is your way forward given how things have not worked out so far?
You see, we have to look at society in a very, very comprehensive way. Why I'm telling you this? Suppose today the Supreme Court takes a decision. Then does it not open the Pandora's box that the government that has backing of the entire country is an elected government, a legitimate government? It enacts a law under the federal structure, so only the constitutionality can be tested by the court. If the court says because of agitation you keep it on hold, then there will be hundreds of instances where tomorrow if you pass a law, there will be a certain section of society, because 1% of the population of this country means a lot, you know. So 1 lakh people, 2 lakh people coming on the street saying, no, we don't want this law, you can't make it. Then what you are actually exchanging is mobocracy for democracy. If this is the form of democracy we are going to have, then we'll have to change the entire constitution. And the government is not standing, Mr. Saha, on ego. Government is talking, government is conceding, and the government is very flexible. But you see, who is saying that scrap the laws? Is that the demand that should come from any section of society? Because the law has been enacted after long evolution by various committees' recommendations, after talking to various pressure groups. And now all the parties had a consensus that yes, farming reform should happen. Now that the law has come, suddenly people come and say that bring the issue of MSP also, which is not there, bring the issue of electricity, bring the issue of Parali, which was not there. These were not the issues of the legislation, but issues have been brought in which are not integral part of the legislation. We are saying talk about the legislation. Tell us where you have the problem. We are ready to address the concerns. But no, we won't. And they don't talk. They just come and say, no, scrap the law.
But you had 8 opportunities to do that, which is what baffles me. That how is it that your best minds have not able to convince the farmers why this is so good for them? In a way, all that your side of the argument is that the farmers have not understood it, they have been misled. I fail to understand why the best minds in the government has failed to do so in the negotiations where only the farmer leaders and the government representatives were there. There was no one else to misrepresent anything. Avik Saha, the proposals were made, written proposals were made to you. 8 amendments have come through. The Prime Minister himself has intervened. What exactly will satisfy you? The government is ready to do a clause-by-clause discussion. Isn't this, playing hardball a little too much? I mean, beyond this, how can anyone even engage or find a solution? There were so many different measures that were tried, but nothing seems to have worked.
Mr. Verma and his party have forgotten the basic points. These laws were introduced with objects and reasons which say they are to ensure that farmers get income guarantee and security. It is not about the rest of the country and reform and whether reform looks nice or ugly. Those who these laws are supposed to benefit have studied the laws, have come to the finding and understanding that unless there are built-in measures that ensure that they will get their prices, these laws make no sense for them. It is only made for those who will buy crops. So they have decided that they will not accept these laws. They have demanded repeal. Mr. Verma's party, in their engagement, the government of India, has not been able to convince the farmers that these actually accrue benefit. The Prime Minister has said, trust me, it will do you good. Now, that's no way of engagement, and people of this country may not trust the Prime Minister just by saying so. So, reasoning on how the benefit farmers has not happened, and the only instance that the government is proceeding is a benefit to Reliance. So farmers are getting even more shocked that Reliance is going to be able to buy that price, and that's the reason why these laws are there. So there is a lot of distrust, there is a lot of confusion. Engagements have not happened. Today's Supreme Court order...
So that's the core issue then, Avik Saha. There is a lot of distrust. Now, how do we handle that? Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. But yes, this is the core issue then. The fact that the government is saying, the Prime Minister is saying, trust me, but the farmers say no unless everything is set in stone, everything is set in law. The farmers are not willing to back out. Imploring simply on the trust factor is not working out here. We'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Mr. Sudesh Verma and Avik Saha, for joining us this afternoon.